Hello class 7. Today let us see section 2 of the lesson The Wind on the Haunted Hill. The author of this lesson is Ruskin Bond. He was a famous contemporary Indian writer. He was born on 19th May 1934. He wrote more than 500 short stories, essays and poems. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award to honor his work of literature. Let us see the characters of the story. Usha, a dark-haired and a rose-cheeked girl who was 11 years old. She also had a younger brother, Suresh. Binya, who was Usha's friend and neighbor. She was older than Usha. Grandpa, Usha's grandpa. Aunt Lakshmi, Usha's aunt. Before starting the second section, let us have a recap of the first. The story goes like this. The wooing wind blew from the Himalayas over the hills and trees. It passed the haunted hill and reached the village. On the slope of the next hill, it tried to blow away the tin roofs, doors, windows, chimneys, and clothes even on sunny days. Usha, her brother Suresh, and a friend Binya spread their clothes out to dry, firmly holding them by rocks. They rested a while there. Usha planned to go for weekly shopping. Binya could not go with her. Suresh was willing, but he had to help Grandpa. He was worried about how Binya would return alone in the dark, passing the haunted hill. Grandfather told a story about an English family which lived on the haunted hill 100 years ago, and the family members were killed by lightning. Grandfather had seen the two children of the family often playing in the moonlight near the ruins even now. This frightened them. Usha went for a weekly shopping, passing through the hills, fields, ruins, and valleys. Their ruined house had crumbling walls and wild flowers, a wild plum tree in the floor of a large hall, lizard on the stones, and singing bird on the empty window. Usha bought soap, matches, spices, sugar, pipe stem, exercise book for Suresh, and marbles. She also bought a necklace in the bazaar for herself. She went to Aunt Lakshmi's house for a tea, and then she found the clouds gathered for rain. She hurried home after collecting her mother's slippers from the cobbler. Now let us read the second section. Strangely, the wind had dropped. The trees were still, not a leaf moved. The crickets were silent in the grass. The crows flew round in a circle, then settled down for the night in an oak tree. I must get home before dark, said Usha to herself as she hurried along the path. But already the sky was darkening. The clouds, black and threatening, looked over Haunted Hill. This was March, the month for storms. A deep rumble echoed over the hills, and Usha felt the first heavy drop of rain hit. Here, the writer says that before it started raining, strangely, the wind had dropped, the trees were still, and not even a leaf moved. The crickets over there were silent in the grass, the crows flew round in circles and then settled on an oak tree. The sky was darkened and the clouds threatened. A deep, echoing sound was heard over the hills. And Usha felt the first heavy drop of rain hit her cheek. Now let us read the second para. She had no umbrella with her. The weather had seemed so fine just a few hours ago. Now all she could do was tie an old scarf over her head and pulled her shawl tight across her shoulders. Holding the shopping bag close to her body, she quickened her pace. She was almost running. But the raindrops were coming down faster now. Big, heavy pellets of rain. A sudden flash of lightning lit up the hill. The ruins stood out in clear outline. Then all was dark again. Night had fallen. I won't get home before the storm breaks, thought Usha. I'll have to shelter in the ruins. She would only see a few feet ahead, but she knew the path well and she began to run. In this paragraph, the writer says the clouds and thunder was threatening to rain, so Usha hurried to reach home before dark. She did not even have an umbrella, but only a shawl and a scarf. Now the raindrops became faster and it was dark and lightning. Usha ran to the ruins to take shelter from the heavy winds and rain. Let us read the third paragraph. Suddenly the wind sprang up again and brought the rain with a rushing against her face. It was cold, stinging rain. She could hardly keep her eyes open. The wind grew in force. It hummed and whistled. Usha did not have to fight against it. It was behind her now and helped her along up the steep path and onto the brow of the hill. There was another flash of lightning, followed by a peal of thunder. The ruins looked up before her, grim and forbidding. In this paragraph, the writer explains about the sudden change in the climatic condition over there. He says, the wind sprang up again and brought the rain with a rush against Usha's face. And the wind grew in force. It whistled, and Usha was frightened now. And she felt as if the wind is following her. Let us read. She knew there was a corner where a piece of old roof remained. It would give some shelter. It would be better than trying to go on. In the dark, in the howling wind, she had only to stay off the path to go over a rocky cliff edge. Hoo, 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 howled the wind. She saw the wild plum tree swaying, bent double, its foliage thrashing against the ground. The broken walls did little to stop the wind. As Usha was walking, she saw a corner where a piece of old roof remained, and she thought it would give her some shelter. And instead of walking in the dark, she thought she may go there, take shelter, and after the wind and the rain stops, she can continue. Usha found her way into the ruined building. Helped by a memory of the place and the constant flicker of lightning, she began moving along the wall, hoping to reach the sheltered corner. She placed her hands flat against the stones and moved sideways. Her hand touched something soft and furry. She gave a startled cry and took her hand away. Her cry was answered by another cry. Half snarl, half screech, and something leaped away in the darkness. It was only a wild cat. Usha realized this when she heard it. The cat lived in the ruins and she had often seen it. But for a moment she had been very frightened. Now she moved quickly along the wall until she heard the rain drumming on the remnant of the tin roof. In this para, the writer says Usha moved sideways to reach the corner of the old roof for shelter. But she seemed to touch a wild cat and was frightened about it. It was dry and more sheltered at the old fireplace opposite, but she did not know the way in the darkness. Once under it, crouching in the corner, she found some shelter from the wind and the rain. Above her, the tin sheets groaned and clattered as if they could sail away at any moment. But they were held down by the solid branch of straggling old oak tree. Usha remembered that across this empty room stood an old fireplace and that there might be some shelter under the blocked up chimney. Perhaps it would be drier than it was in the corner, but she could not attempt to find it just now. She might lose her way altogether. Her clothes were soaked and the water streamed down from her long black hair to form a puddle at her feet. She stamped her feet to keep them warm. She thought she heard a faint cry. Was it the cat again or an owl? But the sound of the storm blotted out all other sounds. There had been no time to think of ghosts, but now that she was in one place, without any plans for venturing out again, she remembered grandfather's story about the lightning, blasts, ruins. She hoped and prayed that lightning would not strike her as she had sheltered there. In this para, the writer says Usha's clothes and long black hair were soaked with water. This shows that she was very scared and frightened. It looked as if it was a puddle at her feet. The sound of the tin sheets and the storm blotted out all other sounds. The lightning and thunder were often. Usha remembered Grandpa's story about the lightning killing the English family and prayed it would not strike her, as she is there for shelter. Thunder boomed over the hills, and the lightning came quicker now. Only a few seconds between each burst of lightning. Then there was a bigger flash than most, and for a second or two the entire ruin was lit up. A streak of blue sizzled along the floor of the building, in at one end and out at the other. Usha was staring straight ahead. As the opposite wall was lit up, she saw, crouching in the disused fireplace, two small figures. They would only have been children. The ghostly figures looked up, staring back at Usha, and then everything was dark again. In this paragraph, the writer says, suddenly, when the lightning flashed again, Usha saw two small figures at the opposite wall near the disused fireplace. And she remembered about the two children. So they could have been the children, she thought. That's all for today. The climax of the story we will see in the third section. Let's read the glossary. Forbidding, unfriendly or frightening. Foliage threshing means hitting leaves and branches. Flicker means shine. Startled means frightened. Remnant means what was left. Crouching means bending down. Groaned and clattered means banged together and made a loud noise. Puddle, a pool of water. Blotted out, hid. Streak, line. Sizzled, hissed like something hot on a frying pan.